was. In fact, they probably were hoping that I was going to be able to discover that this was some kind of a hoax, that, somebody had made a radio control model or something like that.
But that's not what you discovered.
No, in fact, an optical physicist with the Navy was the one that really initiated the interest in getting an analysis done, because he was observing some things that he couldn't quite explain. So I got involved in the project, and extraordinarily enough, we were able to determine that there was absolutely no possible way this could have been a model flying around. This thing was exhibiting capabilities of extraordinary direction reversals at slow speed, but with no deceleration or acceleration.
How did NASA react to your findings? Your investigation?
They didn't have a reaction. There was never any official reaction. They were just more or less bystanders and interested in the results. What we later discovered is that as a result of that, I had sought guidance from the highest levels of the United States intelligence community, in particular Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, who was the head of the National Security Agency, deputy director at CIA, a host of other top intelligence posts, and a technologist. And so there was a sort of a camaraderie just established from that. He had informed me in a documented recorded telephone conversation, inadvertently recorded actually, that the United States government had possession of extraordinary hardware in operational condition that was of non-human origin and manufacture.
You've seen, you say, retrieved craft. What was the expression you used? Hardware.
Operational hardware, right.
You've seen this. In whose possession was it?
I've seen it in both situations. I've seen it where they were being piloted and guided by presumably non-human pilots. They clearly were not remotely operated vehicles. So,
have you seen it in U.S. governmental care?
Yes. And I've talked to a number of test pilots who have worked on the projects and test flight programs, worked with what you might call mechanics, who are actually physicists, who worked on propulsion systems related to the vehicles. And they report some rather extraordinary findings.
How close did you get to one of these things?
I've been within about 200 feet. Is about the closest I've been to them.
Why no closer to?
Well, in the case of vehicles that were operated by non-humans, it was surprising that I was able to get that close, because I certainly didn't have any control of that situation. And in the case of U.S. military and intelligence, due to a variety of security and safety restrictions, really.
Were they not extremely guarded about this operational craft, even given the fact that you were unofficial in certain ways? Were they not extremely guarded and nervous that anyone was seeing it beyond a chosen few?
Well, again, we do have it on record that these issues are covered under national secrecy laws. However, there's somewhat of a dichotomy that exists here. Yes, the technology is highly classified, but the issue of the vehicles themselves, of the presence of the intelligence species behind them, is the subject of an indoctrination program, especially in the United States, but it's also worldwide, I've found. Studies had been conducted back in the very late 50s, paid for by NASA actually, is conducted at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C., regarding the implications of a confrontation with an extraterrestrial culture, whether or not this information should be withheld from the public, what the outcome would be.
It's fairly shattering. It shatters many illusions.
Well, it does shatter,
moral,
especially in areas of theology,
ethical, the whole bit. Yeah,
exactly. Especially in the economic arena is what, of course, the biggest concern was.
So as a corollary to what you're saying, why were they not extra careful that people like you didn't wander in and have a look, which you evidently did, come over and talk about it on radio shows and television shows, which you evidently are?
Well, because in effect, I end up wittingly or unwittingly playing a part in their indoctrination scheme. And the idea is that in order to solve the problem of the chaos created by public disclosure, it was determined back in the late 60s that the solution to avoiding chaos was a slow, long-term indoctrination program. They got involved, the intelligence community got involved in development of films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T.
So briefly, what is your role in this? Why are they relaxed about it?
Well, again, it's like I say, is that there is, in fact, an indoctrination program, and I'm essentially playing a part of that.
You're a drip feed.
You could say that. I mean, the difference would be you can either have lunatics running about talking about aliens and extraterrestrial spacecraft without any basic background knowledge to what they're talking about and just speculating wildly, or you could have somebody who actually knows something about it, or several people who know something about it, to set the record straight and to provide that information.
So you were within 200 feet of this alien craft, Bob, which you say was a retrieved craft in operational order. What did it look like?
Well, again, I don't know that I could say that it was a retrieved craft. As far as I'm aware, it just as well could have been given to us. I mean, it certainly wasn't shot down. It could have been provided. Maybe there was, a barter arrangement or something.
A barter arrangement. I'm going to write that down so I come back to that. Barter arrangement given, because that strikes an interesting note. What did it look like?
Well, it was about a 30-foot diameter, disc-shaped craft, had a sort of a small dome around the center portion. There was protruding flanges equidistant around the outer edge. There was some kind of apparatus hanging down in the bottom. It was floating above the ground, probably at about 10 feet altitude. The tremendous amount of plasmatic light with various colors. Plasma, it's a very, very bright white lights caused by interaction of a very high electrical voltage field around the disk. In fact, I was able to learn that the reason they use a circular type of craft is in order to contain a high voltage field, so you don't have a corona discharge.
Suffice to say, this is a highly sophisticated-looking piece of equipment. How do you know it wasn't made here?
Because I was told, for one, plus I also interviewed an official of the Canadian government who was actually on board the craft and visited with the intelligence that was on board.
He
seemed stunned.
Yes. He did what with the intelligence on board?
Visited with them, communicated, interacted. The individual, I believe, was taken on board, probably without being asked, would you like to come aboard? Did you speak to this individual,
the Canadian?
Yes, I did.
About
interviewed the individual and arranged to have conducted a military polygraph exam.
That's a lie detector.
Yes, indeed.
And what was the result of it?
Well, let me put it this way. The polygraph examiner said, beginning, when we started in on this thing, there's absolutely no way this individual has to be making this up. When we completed the exam, which took approximately a week of extraordinary work just to construct the proper questioning procedure, polygraph examiner came away scratching his head, convinced not only was the witness telling the truth or believed exactly what the witness was saying, but also that this was not any form of hallucination or fantasy.
The witness, as you call this Canadian gentleman, was the only person on board.
Well, so you call him a gentleman. I haven't, I've been very careful to keep neutral with regard to gender.
Oh, so it was a woman.
That's interesting conclusion.
What did this person, he or she, or it, or whatever, relay about their conversations in italics with, or communications, I should say, with the intelligent life form?
Well, intriguingly enough, one of two entities that she had in direct encounter with apparently was dying, was quite ill. They apparently were conducting operations against their will, indicating that they were under control of some other intelligence, shall we say. Don't know what the other intelligence was, or at least I'm not at liberty to say what the speculation is at this point.
Well, what is the speculation? I mean, you can tell. Tell us.
I'd prefer not to get into that end of it, but let's just say.
Why not? I mean, I'm not asking you to, but why not?
Well, I think it would probably be inappropriate because it could, in fact, be rather indictable to a particular species of human, shall we say.
Us, in other words.
Well, not us, but a specific nationality of humans was referenced in this encounter. And it wouldn't be proper or fair to suggest or indict some nationality. It wouldn't be ethical, I'll say.
So they were being made to do this against their will. And how did they communicate?
Telepathically, which is an interesting study in itself. Telepathic communication is quite intriguing because we've been able to learn that you could have 5 different individuals in a room, all speaking different tongues, and a telepathic communication could be transmitted to all 5 simultaneously, and the translation effect takes place within the individual. So, ironically enough, you don't have to know the language to conduct telepathic communication with
Well, if
someone.
we could do it, I could know exactly what you were talking about with that particular species of human a few minutes ago. What did they look like?
They were approximately 4 feet tall. They had self-illuminating skin, was a bit on the sort of yellowish white. The eyes were rather large, black. We don't know if it was actually a coating because of sensitivity to the eyes, but it looked like those big wraparound sunglasses they used to have a couple of decades back.
And they were wearing clothes, this person.
They were wearing black jumpsuit type clothing, right?
Yankee Campbell. Bob Exler, ex-NASA mission specialist, with me. Earlier on, Bob, you were talking about the fact that this craft may well have been given as part of some barter arrangement. You've got to tell me more about this.
Well, the fact that I was able to learn that at one facility, of which I understand that there are several, but I've not visited them, but at one facility there's housed 9 different types of craft, and I assume all in operational condition from what I was told by people who were there, and that to have an operational craft, you would assume it didn't crash somewhere and was recovered and presumably wasn't shot down, or you'd expect to find some kind of damage to it, unless, of course, some method of electromagnetic pulse weapon system or something like that might have been used to disable the craft, and then again you would expect to have some kind of damage in retrieval operation.
So you're maintaining that there's some sort of deal going on between the U.S. government, or the Allied governments, whatever they're called, in this New World Order, and some alien life form. There's some sort of arrangement.
Well, I asked Admiral Inman that question, if he was aware of any ongoing dialogues today. I probably should have left off the word today, because he indicated not to his knowledge. However, I did get the impression that from the period of 1979 to 1982, that there very well could have been some form of dialogue going on with at least one species. And that opens up yet another Pandora's box, because the evidence clearly suggests that there's more than one species involved, just like there's more than one nationality of human being, or species, if you will.
We're talking about more than one genus, more than one...
Apparently so.
Yeah.
And in fact, even in this one, the creatures that I described just a little while ago, it clearly appears that there are different species of those. We find different features, like, for example, the same typical species would have a snout nose feature, whereas others have virtually no facial features. In other words, there's
What
no
would they want
prominent
from us?
nose or mouth or anything like that.
What do they want from us?
Well, that, again, is a very difficult question to answer, because that would presume that we had some knowledge of the alien agenda. We don't really know what the alien agenda is. We can only derive from analysis the facts of what we see. Clearly, what is going on, there is, aside from the fact that there is a genetic engineering program, and that's another mix altogether, but apparently they have abducted, is a term that's been commonly used, human beings from all walks of life with no apparent rhyme or reason to a selection process. For at least 4 generations now, we've been able to document that they've been taken, given medical examinations, extract semen from males, extract eggs from females, fertilize eggs to a half-breed, shall we say, re-implant the egg in the womb. The female, of course, is pregnated, will carry the fetus for 3 months and will be re-abducted and the fetus extracted. In some cases, we've had twins where one of the twins was extracted just before birth, well, which is got to be quite a shock for a mother who, is told she's having twins for 9 months.
This is going on.
Going on, absolutely, right now, today, in very significant numbers.
And the government knows about it.
Absolutely.
And they're quite happy about it because some deal's been done.
We've evaluated as many as 3,000 cases in North America.
So out there in outer space, there's a whole lot of half-breeds going around, half alien, half human, and...
well, we don't really know what the purpose is for anything like that. I mean, maybe they're trying to seed another planet. Who knows what there's been speculation about they're trying to reinstitute some that are on the downside of an evolutionary curve. They're trying to reinstitute some lost qualities or something or other. We have also had some rather extraordinary cases, quite a number really, involving the study of human emotions, where they will create a scenario almost...
The files show Britain also...
environment. Those who have seen the new features of Star Wars Deep Space Nine, they have a holodeck where they seem to be able to simulate a thing. Well, it's almost as if that sort of environment is created in order to extract or elicit from a human being a specific emotion. They'll take that individual into a specific room. We've identified the specific apparatus they'll use to put on the head of the individual, and they'll put a similar apparatus on the head of one of the aliens. They'll somehow trigger a replay mechanism, if you will, and force the human to relive the experience mentally and transpose the whole emotional process to the entity. And then that one will get up, they'll bring another one in, and they'll go through this process 12 times for the same incident, for example. And it's kind of remarkable because one might assume, well, gee, with all this kind of technology, you'd think they have the ability to do a multiple memory dump or something or other, but that's clearly not, those aren't the facts of what we're getting in these cases.
So it's just a matter of time before all this information is commonly known, sometime in the next century, no doubt. But they've got to drip feed it to us. It's too much for us all at once. How do these spacecrafts work?
It's a very, very fascinating science because...
Don't be too technical.
I'll do my best. As Carl Sagan often has said, it's not logical for us to even consider traveling to the nearest star system due to the concepts of linear travel. It doesn't matter how fast you go, even if you can approach the speed of light, you still have to go from point A to point B, and whatever that distance in light years is, it takes way too long for us to consider feasibly going there and coming back. Well, if you can eliminate some of these concepts, is what is apparently happened with these craft, what they do is they're able to generate their own gravitational field. And without getting too technical, they are able to manipulate time, which is something we have been very much aware of for a couple of decades at NASA, is that gravity slows down time in contrast to what we normally think of as 60 seconds a minute and so on. There is no constant relative to that except in one place in terms of the gravity. In other words, the gravity field is the same on the surface of the Earth, but when you leave the surface of the Earth, strange things begin to happen in terms of time. Fact is that time speeds up the further away from a gravity influence you get. Well, these machines create intensified gravitational fields, which in effect slow down time as we see it, and are able to cut down on the amount of time it takes to go from point A to point B. The other point is that if they're able to focus a gravity field on another point, they're able to stretch or pull together points A and B as if you view, let's say, space is like a waterbed. If you put a bowling ball in the middle of the waterbed, the bed kind of wraps up around the ball. Well, this is very typical of what happens in space. If you create an intensified gravitational field, you warp the distances between the two. In other words, shortening the distance between A and B, making the whole concept more feasible. And that's, in a nutshell, really how these things operate, is by warping space and time and getting into some real interesting astrophysical sciences. It interprets into a much more feasible method of travel.
So it's not like getting from A to B, the old linear travel. It's,
exactly.
The technology is kind of antimatter.
Well, there are some systems that use what is referred to as an antimatter reactor, which is an extremely powerful system. It uses super heavy elements, well beyond those that we have been familiar with traditionally, like uranium. They are able to capitalize, apparently there's a low-grade B gravity wave, which is different than the atomic gravity that holds molecules together, that they're able to capitalize off that and amplify it. They use a series of amplifiers in order to focus it. It's a lot easier to focus 3 points than it is to just try to focus one. Typically with a telescope, we'll try to focus one. What we've learned in deep space science, like in the SETI project, is that if you put one antenna here, one in Arecibo, and you spread these around the planet, you can actually focus 3 different points, get a much bigger telescopic view. Well, this is very similar to the types of things that they're doing with gravity waves.
So presumably they've taken some of these elements heavier than uranium down here, and we've now got them in our hands and they're being examined.
Now, that's another interesting phenomenon, too, is that we apparently have about 500 pounds of this, of the fuel, shall we say, the heavy gravity stabilized fuel, the systems that are used. How we got that is remarkable because it only takes about 223 grams to operate one of these things. We don't even know how long. I mean, it's a lot longer than the average car will last, I'll tell you that.
It's amazing stuff. One last question. Why haven't we utilized any of this thus far?
Well, actually, we have in quite a number of areas. The development of the B-2 stealth bomber was one that I'm aware of, where an anti-gravity cabin was developed.
Sure, an impressive machine, but it's hardly a spectacular use of alien technology. I mean,
Well, that's the point.
It's not going to take us to another solar system.
No.
So why haven't we been to another solar system if we have known all this for such a relatively long time?
Well, it's certainly, and that would be an advance. That would assume that we have a complete understanding of the technology to go to another star system.
We've been to the moon using this technology, you think? What
I think that is
moon
true,
missions
yeah.
that we know about?
That we don't know about publicly.
There have been moon missions that we don't know about.
That's my understanding, yes.
Well, we could go on all night, Bob. It's been fascinating having you, and have a safe journey home. I know you're flying back tomorrow. Bob Exler, investigations analyst, and a man with a good story to tell, if nothing else. I think people will have enjoyed listening. Thanks very much.